A tragic fate is defined as a situation that is extremely sad, often due to death or suffering. It can also refer to the inevitable downfall of a character, which is often the result of a combination of external forces and personal flaws. Now, the Soul series have a lot of tragic characters, and some of these characters happen to be heroes at one point, even if it's not from our perspective. These Souls heroes were either brave soldiers defending the world from a corrupting evil essence, people who took it onto themselves to protect their kingdom one way or the other, or people who are known for their sheer strength and leadership capabilities. They are heroes without a doubt. Unfortunately though, some of these said heroes had tragic fates, which led me to make this video to find out which of the soulsborne heroes had the worst fate. Now before I get into this video, just to let you know, I'm mostly just going to talk about the heroes that stood out to me the most. I'm not going to include every single heroic character in the series. While that would be cool, I feel like it's best to keep the list at a moderate size instead of making it bloated and unnecessarily long. Anyways, without wasting any more of your time, let's talk about our first hero. Isshin was a powerful warrior who conquered many strong foes and conquered many lands. One of these lands was Ashina. With the help of some other strong allies, he was able to defeat General Tamura and finally took over Ashina. In his later years, he adopted Genichiro and Emma under his wings, and he helped them in their training to become the formidable swordsmen they are currently, even though Genichiro got most of his training from Lady Tomoe. Under his ruling, the land of Ashina seemed like it was in a really good state, or at least decent enough, as they barely had any intruders because it was protected by him. So it's safe to say that a lot of the people took a liking to Isshin, which would make him a hero in definition. Later on, he gave the title of ruler to his grandson Genichiro, who is also the leader of the Ashina military. Now the events of the game took place where Genichiro is trying to get Kuro to grant him immortality. Kuro refuses, so now he's trying to find another way to make himself immortal and possibly his army as well. Towards the end game, Isshin died of old age and he was later revived in his prime by Genichiro. However, after a long duel, Sekiro finally killed him with honor and Isshin is now dead. For real this time. You see, there's no doubt that Isshin is a hero and a strong one at that, but when it comes on to having a tragic fate, he didn't have any. I mean, there was no great betrayal, no one assassinated him. His land, sure, it's in the middle of an invasion, but it's not destroyed or run down. His mental state is also in the right place, so in total, out of all the main heroes of the Souls universe, he had one of the best lives and died with pride and honor. Before he was known as Godfrey the First Elden Lord, he was known as Hoarlu. Hoarlu was a ferocious warrior with a lust for battle. Later on, his name was changed to Godfrey and he was given Siraj to control his rage. But this wasn't the only reason why he was given Siraj, as he also became Queen Marika's consort, thus giving him the title of First Elden Lord. Sometime later, Godfrey led his army into many battles for the sake of Queen Marika and the Golden Order. One of these battles was with the Fire Giants. He and his army were victorious, and this war birthed the Age of the Earth Tree. Godfrey and Marika went on to have 3 demigod children, Godwyn the Golden, and the twins Morgott and Mogwyn. Sometime later, after countless battles, Godfrey lost the golden hue in his eyes. Was this because he had no one else to fight, or maybe it was just Marika removing his grace? It could be a combination of both, to be honest, but later on, Marika told Godfrey to take his army and leave the lands between and wage war in the Badlands. She promised him and his army that after they die, they will be brought back many years later to the lands between once again. Godfrey took his men and went to the Badlands. He then became chieftain and went back to his former name as Hoarlu. After this, he eventually died to a powerful enemy, or multiple enemies, I'm not sure. But he was then brought back to the lands between when the guidance of grace chose him. The last time we saw Godfrey is when he's curdling the body of Morgott in the capital, showing remorse. He then battled us and we eventually defeated him, and that was the last of him. Now, the reason why I call Godfrey a hero is because many men looked up to him. One of these men happened to be none other than General Radahn himself, who modeled part of his attire to match Godfrey. He was the first Elden Lord and was basically a focal point in the birth of the modern age of the Earth Tree. As if it wasn't for him and his army, the Fire Giants would still be around, postponing this age. Now in terms of his fate, it was not tragic at all. Sure, he was sent away to the Badlands to fight for who knows how long, just to die only to be resurrected again, to return and become the Elden Lord once more. But knowing Godfrey, and compared to the other tragic fates that I have yet to mention, this is pretty tame, and I'm pretty sure Godfrey had no issues with this whatsoever. Sure, he died by the hands of us, but let's be honest, a lot of these characters ended up dying in our hands, and even in death, Godfrey commended us on our strength, so it's safe to assume that he was pretty chill with it. Overall, Godfrey's fate isn't one of tragedy, as he did go out with a noble death by the hands of one of his fellow Tarnished, which wouldn't be super upsetting to him. Godwyn was the son of Morgott and Godfrey the first Elden Lord. He was a great figurehead as a lot of people loved him, including his siblings. During his prime, there was an attack on the capital by the ancient dragons, and Godwyn and his army was able to defeat all of them. Not only did he defeat them, but he was able to make new friendships out of this, as Lanciacs and Fortisacs became close to him. They even took on human forms to teach dragon incantations to the people. However, the glory days of Godwyn the Golden were coming to an end. You see, his sister Ranni the Witch had this grand scheme of ushering in a new age, and unfortunately Godwyn was mixed up in this. She sent a bunch of Black Knife assassins to kill him with the power of destined death. However, while Godwyn's soul died that night, his body didn't, as it kept growing and mutating all over the lands between. Some people have tried ways to revive him, either through rebirth or just simply trying to restore his soul, but none were successful, as his soul is completely gone. As you can see, Godwyn had a great time growing up and was a great ruler who was loved by many. However, it all came to an end due to his assassination. While this is truly a terrible fate, I do believe it's not as bad as some of the other ones that's to come on the list. I think other than the fact that he was killed, the other bad part is that his body continued to grow and mutate. However, despite these things, at least he wasn't corrupted by something and end up going mad, causing destruction everywhere. Now, the reason why I mention this is because a lot of these other guys I've yet to mention went mad, while Godwyn just simply, just died. Which again is definitely tragic, as this led to the lands between being in a messed up state, but as a fate to Godwyn himself, it's terrible, but trust me, there are way worse coming up. The Ivory King once ruled Elden Lord, and his roots are believed to lie in Farosa, where he served as a high-ranking knight, known for his compassion and strength. He was known to always defend his people no matter what. One time Alsana, a child of the dark, a fragment of Mono, sought refuge in his kingdom. He offered her protection even though he probably knew of her dark intentions. At some point, ancient chaos was discovered beneath the land. The Ivory King used this powerful soul to build Elden Lord and contain the chaos. A cathedral was constructed to quell the flame, but it couldn't be pacified. To combat it, knights and golems were stationed throughout the city, while others were sent into the depths of chaos. Unfortunately, none of those knights returned. Sensing the decay of his soul, the Ivory King left without a word, entrusting everything to Alsana. He ventured into the chaos and, along with his knights, was consumed by the flame. After his departure, the ivory gates opened and Elden Lord fell into ruins, growing cold and lifeless. In my video ranking the main monarchs of the Souls games based on how good they were, a lot of people wanted to see the Ivory King on the list, and after reading through his lore, I can see why. This man was genuinely a great guy that wanted to protect his kingdom and would literally sacrifice himself to do so. He can even see the good in people, as he prevented Alsana from being another Nashandra in terms of evilness. It's no doubt that he's a hero, but at the end of the day, he did sacrifice himself to protect his kingdom, even though it did go to ruin shortly after, which is a bit sad. What's even worse is that the Ivory King was taken over by the ancient chaos, and now you and some of his former knights have to put him down for good. This is definitely a tragic story of a man who wanted to protect his kingdom from a great threat, but that said threat ended up taking over him at the end. The Abyss Watchers were once elite soldiers tasked with defending the world from the Abyss, a dark corrupting force. They were inspired by the legendary knight Artorias, who was the first to be sent to battle the Abyss. Artorias was a hero who fought Monos, the father of the Abyss, in an attempt to stop its spread and save Princess Dusk. His bravery and sacrifice left a lasting legacy that inspired the Abyss Watchers to follow in his footsteps. At some point, the Abyss Watchers became Lords of Cinder, powerful beings who were given the mission to rekindle the first flame. This connection seemed like it would make them even more capable of fighting off the Abyss. However, that wasn't the case, unfortunately. When the Ashen One encounters the Abyss Watchers, they are locked in a brutal battle, not with enemies, but with each other. Sadly, they all succumb to the very darkness they have sworn to destroy. The Abyss had consumed them, driving them mad and turning them against one another. Despite their tragic fate, the Abyss Watchers were seen as heroes and were respected by many. It's a sad irony that they fell victim to the very evil that their hero, Artorias, also failed to defeat. Their story is one of valor, honor, and ultimately tragedy, as they couldn't escape the grasp of the abyss they fought so hard to destroy, which makes the end of their story a bit sadder than, the previous ones I've mentioned. Speaking of abyss, now let's talk about Knight Artorias, who's the most well-known hero on this list. Artorias was one of Gwyn's 4 knights, and he was given the task to go to the town of Ulasil. Why? Well, because the town and its residents were taken over by the abyss. He was sent there to ward off that said abyss, defeat Monos, and rescue Princess Dusk. He went on this mission with his trusty companion, Sif the Great Wolf. However, things didn't go as planned. As you see, Monos is way stronger than they thought, and he did a lot of damage to not only Artorias, but Sif as well. Now, Artorias had a shield that can ward off the abyss, but he chose to protect Sif with it instead, leaving himself vulnerable to the abyss, which unfortunately later corrupted him. The last time Artorias was seen was outside of the township, and as you can see, the abyss drove him mad as he's no longer himself. Now, some of you who haven't played Dark Souls 1 or maybe not so familiar with the lore might be asking, well, why does the Abyss Watchers and many other people think of him as some great hero? I mean, they even refer to him as the Abyss Walker. Now, another question you might have is, if not Artorias, then who stopped or at least slowed down the spread of the abyss? Well, it's us. You see, we went back in time and basically finished up the job by not only killing Monos but also rescuing Princess Dusk. However, since we got no cloud, everyone thought it was Artorias. It's no doubt that Artorias had a tragic fate. However, despite him succumbing to madness and not truly attaining his goal, on the bright side of things, he wasn't truly forgotten, as many people saw him as a hero, and years to come there would be an entire Undead Legion army inspired by him. So at least he was still praised. And I used to think that this corruption by the Abyss was for a long time. However, I do think that the corruption only lasted a short while, because when we found Sif, he was still being protected by Artorias' great shield and Princess Dusk was still alive. So we probably came there shortly after his corruption. I brought this up to show that he didn't went mad for like 100 years, but only for a short time. Which is still tragic, but it's not as bad as I initially thought. At a young age, Radahn looked up to both his father Radahn and the first Elden Lord Godfrey, who were both powerful warriors. Radahn was taught gravity magic at a young age so he could ride his trusty steed, who was way too scrawny for him. He later on became a great general, leading many battles. He was praised by many for not only his strength and bravery, but also his compassion. One of the people that praised him the most was Miquella, who saw Radahn fit to be his consort for his new age. Radahn was given the offer by Miquella, and I'm not sure if he agreed or not, but I think it's possible that he agreed at first. I mean, his name in the boss fight is called Promised Consort, so it shows that at one point he did agree to become his brother's consort. Now that might sound weird, but I feel like a lot of people misinterpret how the term consort is being used in Elden Ring. Sure, consort is the wife or husband of a reigning monarch in regular terms, but when it comes on to people like Miquella and Radahn, I think it just means right-hand man, champion, or just lord of that said monarch. I don't think it has to be inherently sexual or marriage related, at least in the Elden Ring world. Many years later, during or after the Shattering, Miquella is completing his goals in the Lands of Shadow as he gathered all the key components to his plans. Malenia, who's the right-hand woman of Miquella and twin sister, was sent to kill General Radahn to retrieve his soul. Why, you may ask? Well, remember that promise both Miquella and Radahn made? Well, I guess Radahn wasn't feeling that anymore and decided to back out, and because of this, Malenia stepped in and basically said, hey, if you don't want to give it up, I'ma just take it from you. Which, now that I've said that out loud, sounds very weird, but that's basically how it went. However, Radahn was like, alright, pull up then, and they both went to war with each other, and it ended in a draw as Malenia let the Scarlet bloom and basically destroyed half of Caelid and scrambled Radahn's brains while she retreated. After this, Radahn was left wandering the Wailing Dunes in a maddening state. He's no longer the great hero anymore, just a madman roaming around. Sometime later, we and a couple other Tarnished put him out of his misery and finally killed him. At least, that's what we thought. Remember when I said that Miquella was in the Land of Shadow gaining key components to his plans? Well, one of these key components was Mohg's body, which is going to be used to host Radahn's soul. So yeah, technically Radahn didn't die, and now he's just a puppet of Miquella, and at the end of the day, we killed both him and the treacherous Twink. At the end of the day, there's no doubt that Radahn was a great hero, but unfortunately, he went mad due to the Scarlet Rot and was used as a puppet. A once great hero who eventually succumbed to the rot due to a bloody battle and was later returned to his prime state, but unfortunately as a puppet or tool for his brother. It's a tragedy indeed. Morgott was born an Omen, which means he's born with horns protruding in his body and he's without grace. Now people who are born without grace, their souls won't return to the Earth Tree, which means they can't be rebirthed. You see, Marika had a certain grudge against horned folks because, well, you know. Because of this, she sent not only Morgott but his twin Godwyn to live in the sewers of Leyndell. Here Morgott had a rough life. Not only does he not have a true home, but he has to worry about people going after him and his brother. However, despite this, Morgott never hated the Golden Order and still wished to serve it. Fast forward many years later, Godfrey is exiled, Godwyn was slain in the Night of the Shattering, and because of this said shattering, Marika is nowhere to be found, and now there's a whole war going on, and Morgott saw this as a way to become the Shadow King of Leyndell, building an army and protecting the capital by any means. He created a persona, Morgott, and basically went on the battlefield along with his army. But no matter how loyal Morgott is to the Golden Order and how much he protects Leyndell, he still doesn't have any grace and is denied entry from entering the Earth Tree itself to become a true Elden Lord. While Morgott may not be the most heroic character from our perspective, he still tried his hardest to protect Leyndell from the war, as he even went out of his way to create a fake persona to ward off anyone from entering the kingdom. Now in terms of his fate, he was cursed from a young age, abandoned by his parents, and was sent to live in the sewers. On top of that, there were probably Omen killers who would go out their ways to try to hunt him down. In his later years, despite the Golden Order and the Greater Will denying him grace and an entrance to the Earth Tree, he still tried his best to defend the kingdom as much as possible. At the end, we end up killing him, and unlike Godfrey, he disdains the Tarnished a lot, as he doesn't see them fit to be on the throne, even in his death, which makes his fate the worst so far. Ludwig was the first of many hunters of the Healing Church, many of whom were clerics. Clerics often became the most hideous beasts. Under Ludwig's command, the Healing Church formed its own group of hunters. He trained them to be disciplined and honorable, even teaching ordinary citizens of Yharnam to fight the plague together. Ludwig wielded a magical greatsword he found, which let him tap into cosmic powers. He followed the sword's guidance, trusting the small lights around it to ease his fears during hunts. The sword itself seemed to have a will, which strongly influenced Ludwig. Despite his success, some criticized Ludwig, calling him a beast-crazed madman. He endured so much disrespect from those who disagreed with his ways. Eventually, Ludwig gave in to the bloodlust and turned into a monstrous beast mixed with both horse and man. Trapped in the hunter's nightmare, he lost all sense of himself and in a blind rage slaughtered so many beasts and hunters that he created the blood river flowing through the nightmare. Now, being transformed into an abomination is one thing, but being stuck in an endless nightmare is literally just being in hell itself. Imagine being once a strong, noble hero to the people, but eventually got so bloodlusted and brutal that you were cursed to look like the very thing that you were meant to kill. Not only that, but being in an endless nightmare of suffering. That's terrible. And I know someone like Morgott had a horrible time growing up and having to live with the fact that he was an Omen, but at least he wasn't trapped in a nightmare for who knows how long. Same thing can go for Radahn. So yeah, because of this, I chose to put Ludwig at the #1 spot for the hero with the worst and most tragic fate. In the beginning of the video, I mentioned that I would only talk about heroes who stood out to me the most. But if you have any other hero you thought should be on the list, feel free to leave a comment down below. Also, while doing that, if you like content like this, then be sure to like and subscribe, only if you want to. At the end of the day, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you guys have a good one.